Hi everyone, it's Quarantine. I'm Amy. I use she, her, hers pronouns.
And I'm Mitch. I use he, him, his pronouns.
Mitch, what's our question of the week?
What are you currently doing to protect your mental health?
Good one. So, my first answer is Animal Crossing always. But more importantly than that, even, is just staying in contact with my family and my friends and reaching out to the people who kind of lift me up when things are getting a little tough. And I actually just recently texted my therapist just to kind of be like, hey, nothing huge is going on, but like check out these really good things that are going on for me right now, because she's always said like it's really important that like I make sure I'm maintaining the good that's happening, and she loves hearing how her clients are doing. So she like encourages us to just text her to be like, hey, I had a great talk with this person the other day and we haven't talked in forever or whatever. So I just reached out to her and I was like, hey, so I have a few like really good things going on. And she was like, oh my gosh, I'm so proud of you. You've got all the strength that you need to do it. And like that was just kind of an extra little boost that I didn't realize I needed until she gave it to me.
That's awesome.
Yeah. How about you?
My definite biggest thing is, just taking contact with my therapist as well, and checking in. We're kind of doing like an every other week kind of thing right now, which is pretty good. And too, similarly, like focusing on the good things. My partner and I, we got engaged right before COVID happened, and we never really got to like enjoy it because, we had to pivot. And so now that we are in our new house together and we're like getting to the point where we're almost unpacked, we're starting to have some of those conversations of like, what's that gonna look like, and what are we gonna wear and whatever. And that's been really, it's been really good because it helps me maintain like that future oriented view and like the acknowledgement that the current situation isn't a permanent thing. And of course, hanging out with this puppy. Anyway, that brings us to our topic for this week, which is talking about mental health and what you can do to improve it.
And why it's important to take care of. We talk about going to the doctor and getting tested for COVID, or having your checkups, or if there's something going on, going to that doctor, taking your insulin, doing what you need to do. But we forget about the fact that mental health is still just important as physical health. It's just harder to keep that in mind because you can't see your mental health the way you can see a gash on your arm when you've fallen off of a tree, or you can't, it's not as visible to the outside world that there's something wrong, but you and you know when something's wrong, and it doesn't feel good when something's going on. And it's just as important to take care of your mental health as it is to take care of your physical health, because you can't have one without the other.
Mm-hmm. Well, and people too around you can often kind of see when something is not quite the same. And for a lot of people, I know that's been the case with me. Amy knows me like an open book. So Amy can pick up just from my tone when I'm struggling with something in a day or in a situation. So too, like the important thing that I think isn't really getting talked about is that with COVID, we already have so many things in our lives that are uncertain, right? And that are stressful and that can cause us to have anxiety when we're thinking about the future and things like that. And then all of that has been compounded so much by the additional layer of anxiety of the pandemic. And so finding ways to control kind of the narrative that's coming in, like for example, the media, and even when you're on social media, right, it's relentless. So what are some ways that you can establish boundaries around like the COVID content coming into your house?
So I know that for me personally, you can search for tags or keywords on social media platforms, and usually you can like blacklist those words so that you don't have to keep seeing posts about them. So I know that a lot of people, and I personally, I've taken a back seat to checking the news and stuff, but I haven't blacklisted any words on social media, partially because it's important for me to know that my family and friends are doing what they need to do to be protecting themselves. And if they're sharing unsafe rhetoric, it's really important for me to know that, partially to keep myself safe and also to hopefully engage in some sort of discourse with them. But you can blacklist words so that it's not popping up in your newsfeed so much, so you can take a breather. I know a lot of people during election season will blacklist certain words so that they don't have to hear it, because it can get really overwhelming. So that's a really good option to do. Limit how much you're watching the news, limit how much you're reading the news. And if you can't do that, or if you're not comfortable doing that, then make sure that you're also looking up maybe some sort of uplifting stories of like a dog meeting his new cat brother for the first time, or like a little kid getting glasses and being able to see for the first time in their whole life. Just something really simple and sweet and uplifting that'll kind of prevent you from getting sucked into all of that and not having a way out.
Those are all really good tips. I'm trying to think of like what my recent happy news stories were. The only thing I can think of truly is I was exploring my new neighborhood and I found a farm nearby where they have a donkey, and I just love donkeys. So I keep driving by it when I'm out doing whatever I have to do to see this donkey.
Gosh.
But too, another thing that I know has really helped me is I think it's important to know what the real facts are, right? And so choosing who you're going to trust and what news sources you're going to read, and picking just 2 or 3, and then having that boundary of, I'm not going to look at other content. If it's from the CDC and the World Health Organization, I'll read it. But if it's from anybody else, I'm not going to get into it.
Right.
That's a good way to make sure that you are still informed and getting the information that you need, while filtering out some of like the unnecessary like projecting and worrying that can come with a lot of news cycles. Because the truth is, we don't really know everything yet, and that's okay, but it's scary, and trying to figure it out without any basis in fact isn't helping anybody.
Well, and it's also really important to know the basis of the websites you're reading, because there are certain websites and news outlets that are very politically aligned, and so there's a tendency to publish stories that only align with that political standing. So it's really important to know, which news outlets are the best ones and which ones are known to kind of align with politics and which ones are known for giving straight up facts. Like the CDC, they're not going to mess around. They're going to be like, all right, this is what it is, this is how it's going. The World Health Organization, this is what it is, this is how it's going. And those are really the 2 best standards to find.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Especially like as we're related to COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And give yourself that break. Remind yourself that it's okay to not take in everything. And just because somebody posts something on social media that you don't agree with, you don't have to respond. You're not obligated to give them that time. And I think that's an important thing to remind ourselves of.
That's a huge boundary to set. There have been a few times where people have said something and I've looked at it and I've considered responding to it, and then I've looked at it and just been like, the base level of knowledge I would need to lay down, like, it's not, is this worth it to me, or am I just saying it to make myself feel better, or am I doing this with the intention of truly educating this person? And a lot of times I have to just be like, all right, you know what, it's not my job to educate to the level that they need to be educated, and at this point I'm just doing it because I'm annoyed, not because I actually want to make sure that they know. And that's a huge thing to figure out, because it's a really important boundary to set, so that you're not also emotionally depleting yourself all the time and then getting angry when the person you're trying to educate doesn't want to hear it, so they rally against you, and then you're like, well, what the heck now?
So when we're talking about like our mental health, like Amy was saying earlier, what does that look like? we don't always really know that there's an issue until it's become incorporated into our patterns of behavior. And then for people with others in their life, like what are some of the things that you kind of want to keep an eye out for when it comes to mental health? Like what are some of the signs that things are going on? So according to the CDC, that some of the most common signs of distress or that somebody is struggling with their mental health are feelings of fear, anger, sadness, worry, numbness, or extreme frustration, all of which are perfectly valid things to feel, but if they're prolonged, can be really detrimental. Changes in appetite, energy, and activity levels, difficulty concentrating and making decisions, difficulty with sleeping or having regular nightmares can be a sign. Physical reactions such as headaches that you didn't have before or body pain that you didn't have before that isn't correlated with a physical injury, stomach problems, and even sometimes your skin, you can have a skin rash from stress as well. Worsening of chronic health problems, again, a hard thing to directly correlate to mental health, but is possible. And increased use of alcohol, tobacco, other drugs, other substances. Sometimes it can even be if you go from drinking 2 cups of coffee a day to drinking like 4 or 5, that can be a sign that you are more stressed out and you feel like you need more energy because maybe you're having more of that tiredness. I know that's something that I've done before, that other people have picked up for me before I even realized it was a thing I was doing.
Well, and even if it's not about energy, like it might be about seeking that comfort. So there is a direct correlation between the feeling you get when you have your hands wrapped around a warm mug of coffee or tea, and when somebody holds your hand, it stimulates the same nerves. So I know for me, my sister and I talk all the time about like we love coffee, but sometimes it's not necessarily about the coffee as much as it is just like sitting there with your comfort and you have your favorite mug and it just smells so good, and like it's more about the experience than it is the actual drinking of the coffee. So that's another important thing too. If you're really seeking those comfort things, you might want to sort of sit down with yourself and figure out, okay, why am I seeking so much more comfort than I typically have been? Because that's another indication that there's some feelings of isolation or loneliness or uncertainty or discomfort, and that can play a huge role in mental health.
Especially with the quarantine, those feelings of loneliness and that seeking of comfort. And now is a time that a lot of people are needing to identify those things that bring them comfort and what they can do to cope in a healthy way. And so finding ways to switch to decaf maybe if you need to continue to hold coffee through the afternoon so that you're able to get the sleep you need to function, or identifying like at this time on this day every week I'm going to call this friend and we're going to have a cup of coffee together, and catch up to kind of decrease that loneliness, because that's definitely a big player for all of us right now, is really missing our sense of community, our friends, our families. So finding those new and creative ways to connect is really important.
Yeah, and I mean, we talked about this when we were talking about how Pride Revive came about, was because our neighbors, my partner and I are super, super good friends with our neighbors. Like, we have family dinners together. We call each other our family members. So we're incredibly close. And when the pandemic first started and we were all self-quarantined and there was that shelter-in-place order we had to follow, we just put like a rainbow handprint in our window and they're just like, hey, we're over here. And we like sent each other knock-knock jokes and we would play hangman. So like we were very interactive with each other because we were like, I can see you in your kitchen, but I can't be in person with you. And it's so hard because every Friday we would have s'mores at your fire pit, and now all of a sudden we're just waving forlornly from our kitchen windows to each other. But getting creative was a lot of fun because then if one of us was slacking, we could text and be like, excuse me, that joke is getting stale, what's next? And it was just a really good way to be like, we're still here, we still are interacting, we're still friends, we're still family. But it was really important for us to make sure that we were maintaining those lines of communication and being fun and creative about it so that we could, not feel like we were islands.
Definitely what we're seeing right now, too, is a lot of people are very committed to the idea that things are better because there has been a decline in cases up until recently, and it did seem like things were very well controlled. And so there are a lot of people who are trying to, go back to quote unquote normal, or the way things were prior to COVID. And the reality of that situation is that we're not in a place where we can do that safely, at least not on a long-term basis. So I know as someone who, for my own health reasons, has to maintain that stricter level of boundaries to see other people out and about with their friends, it's really sad for me because I would love more than anything to be able to do that safely. So it's really, I think, a great time to focus on what are some of those creative things that we were doing at the beginning that maybe we've stopped doing because we were so hopeful that maybe we would be coming out of this quarantine and things would be back to normal, because you do still need to prioritize your physical safety. Mm-hmm. My big sister, she also has reasons that she has to be really careful when it comes to her COVID risk. And so she actually had to leave where she was, which was very, very close to me, and is now quite farther away from where I'm at. And she is one of my favorite people. Like, I go to her for everything. She's one of my best friends. I love hanging out with her. And so what we did is we downloaded the Marco Polo app, which lets you like record a video and you can send it back and forth. And then they can view it on their own time. So we weren't always lining up for FaceTime or for Zoom calls, but like that way we can still send each other a message and see each other. And that's kind of like dwindled, but that's something we're going to start doing more of when we can. So things like that, continuing to find those creative ways. Amy and I discovered, a beach that isn't super highly populated, and we sat and stuck our toes in the water, mm-hmm. and it was really nice. And finding, those ways to go out and experience the world while still maintaining social distance is going to be so much better for your mental health than just kind of the sitting and feeling sad because you aren't able to do the things everyone else is doing, or going out and doing the things everyone else is doing and putting your physical health at risk. Mm-hmm. So finding that balance.
Yeah, and it's
key.
It's tough. It's a really hard dance to have to perform, but it's crucial. And so we wanted to talk today about why it's so important and how to maybe do that dance, because there are a lot of resources that are available, but right now it's very self-guided because we can't all be going out into the community and offering our services hands-on the way that we have been before. So there is a higher level of personal responsibility in seeking out help when you need it, and being able to be vulnerable with yourself and say, okay, I'm really struggling and it's not getting better. I thought I could handle this on my own, but it's really beginning to affect all aspects of my life. And a big part of that might be ending up seeking out therapy. And it's, like we said, it's harder to access that right now if you're waiting for someone to come to you, because a lot of agencies are on the basis of appointments. So we wanted to talk a little bit about how to find those resources, kind of put in a plug for our agency on its own. We work directly with our clinicians. We have art therapists, we have not music therapists, but we have a hypnotherapist, we have standard talk therapy. So we've got a lot of really great things to offer. I know that a long time ago when I was seeking out a counselor, I went on a website called Psychology Today, because you can put in specifically what you're looking for. And at that point, I knew that I was seeking out a therapist to help me with something related to being a member of the LGBTQ community. So I wanted to make sure that I found a member of the LGBTQ community to be a therapist for me. And I knew I wasn't comfortable going to a man at that point. So I specifically Googled lesbian therapists in my area, and it linked me up with the therapist I went to and still go to per diem if I need to, and just send text messages to be like, hey, things are good. But doing that was so scary. And I remember acutely getting a phone call from her, and I was at the ESL parking lot here in Canandaigua, and I was like shaking, and I started crying a little bit when I was explaining to her why I was seeking out therapy. And it was honestly, talking to her and reaching out to her was scarier than going to the first appointment. But when I did it, I felt so much more relief, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't wait until my first appointment. Like, I can't wait. I'm so excited to be able to sit down and talk with somebody. And it ended up being so helpful. And, you know, there was a lot of removing that stigma that's attached to mental health of like, hey, I'm not weak. I'm just not necessarily equipped at this point to deal with these situations, but someone else is. And so she's going to help me. And then I'm going to be able to take this and help the people I help, but also I'm going to have that knowledge moving forward so that I can prevent those situations from happening again to the best of my ability. And that's exactly what happened. And now I text her more to give her updates on how well things are going than like, hey, I'm in a crisis. And I think I wouldn't be in the place I am now if it hadn't been for reaching out and making myself vulnerable, even though I really didn't want to. It was more than worth it.
Kind of speaking to that too, like that vulnerability and that fear and that level of discomfort is so valid, especially for people in the LGBTQ community, because you don't always know what you're walking into. So to speak to that, you know, at this point in time, a lot of agencies, including ours, and a lot of independent clinicians are doing telehealth. And oh my gosh, when I was trying to find a long-term therapist, would I have loved to be able to do so through telehealth? Because if the personalities aren't a match, or if you feel uncomfortable in that conversation and it's something that you can't or don't want to continue talking about, like, you have an immediate out. You are not physically in a space where you can become uncomfortable in that situation. I know a lot of people, myself included, have had experiences with mental health providers that maybe were not as culturally competent on LGBTQ identities as they should have been. And so it is really scary. But with telehealth, you have that option of getting help without being in a situation that is going to make you feel entrapped in a space with someone who is committed to misunderstanding you. So talking about our agency, telehealth is an option, as is in-person service locally. There's also, and I believe it's a website and an app called Talkspace that is not affiliated with us, but that's a great way to access virtual counseling as well. And I know they have a specific LGBT inclusive module and component. There's also, too, for people who are in situations where they are in crisis, there are specifically organizations like the Trevor Project for LGBTQ youth, which I know we talk about all the time, and the Trans Lifeline, that are more specifically versed in working with our community in a culturally competent way. So the Trevor Project is available 24/7. Their number is 1-866-488-7386. And yes, we will put that in the bubble below, as always. And the Trans Lifeline is the one that I really like to give out for the reason that they work with trans people regardless of age, and they don't report the data to anybody, and it's fully staffed by trans folks for trans folks. So their hotline is 877-565-8860. And what's really awesome that I didn't know they were doing until right this moment when I pulled it up for this video is that they now have a direct line that is a Spanish extension. So for people whose first language is Spanish, it's now accessible to them as well, which is fantastic and so needed.
So, and beyond just those two hotlines, our agency, and I know a lot of other agencies too, but specifically our agency I can speak to is we've got our 24-hour hotline, and we always have we've got two people on it at all times, so that if for whatever reason the first call doesn't hit what we call our front line, someone on the back line is right there to pick that call up, so we're not dropping calls. So that number is 1-800-695-0390. And we're all trained in that. I know Mitch and I have trained our agency ourselves on cultural competency, and they're also really good at being like, you know what, I don't have the answer for you, but what I can do is find it for you and link you to the right people. And if it's a situation where you're an LGBTQ person and you don't know how to get into contact with people, you call that hotline and they're gonna put you in direct contact with me or Mitch. So we have crisis services available, but what's really important, and I think the message we're trying to drive home, is that in spite of the fact that we have those crisis services, we don't want it to have to get to the point where it is a crisis. Know that you are supported if it does become a crisis, but also know that we're here to help you put in boundaries and set up safety plans for yourself so that we can avoid it becoming a crisis.
Yeah, and to that, there's also a national number that's super simple because it's just 211 that exists to connect people with all different issues with the resources that are available in their actual community. So no matter where in the country you're calling from, they're going to connect you with resources that are relevant to your location. And that goes for access to food, and that goes to access to physical health care as well as mental health care. They can help connect you to local housing resources, to domestic violence resources. And that's a great way to get information prior to a crisis situation as well as in a crisis situation. So making steps that you can employ to cope with that stress, like we were talking about, engaging with the therapist is an excellent tool. But other ways that you can manage your stress prior to it escalating is making a plan for what you will do if you are sick with COVID. It's a great way to negate the stress of COVID is what do I have prepared? Who can I contact to make sure that my dog gets fed? Figuring out with your employer what is going on as far as their employee support programming. A lot of states have mandated paid sick time be available to people who are diagnosed with COVID. So you have rights and options. So building a plan will help you feel more comfortable with that possibility. Knowing when and how you can get treatment for mental health and for physical health. So identifying ahead of time if, things start to get really bad, this is who I'll call. Having that plan in place so that it's not waiting till you're in a moment where it's really bad before you know who to reach out to. Like we said before, taking breaks from the news, watching or reading them. I love the idea of blacklisting certain words so you don't have to see tweets about certain topics. That's a great idea. Doing things like meditating if you're comfortable, taking deep breaths and practicing breath work, eating healthy, balanced meals when you can. For me, that usually encompasses trying like a new food too, or something that disrupts whatever routine I'm in that is healthy, like making a new dish that I've always wanted to try, something like that.
And it's really important too, when you're at home, making sure that you're continuing to give yourself the respect that you would give yourself when you're not in a crisis. So like working from home, my kryptonite is potato chips, and it will always be potato chips. But I have worked really hard on like making them a treat for myself and not just like we're out of chips, I'm running to the store, because I still owe it to myself to take care of this body, which means not stuffing it full of sour cream and onion potato chips when I get snacky. So I tried cotton candy grapes for the first time ever, and they were so good. They were so good. They're expensive. I won't do them again, but we were like, you know what? I've never had these. We see them every single time we're at the grocery store. We're gonna try them this time. So make sure you're respecting your body and not giving yourself just carte blanche permission to eat like a compactor like I do sometimes, because you do still owe it to yourself to take care of yourself. And when you're not eating right, and when you're sort of just indulging and never actually practicing moderation or things like that, your body truly does start to get sluggish, and you start to feel yucky because you're ladening yourself down with all these heavy foods instead of eating some grapes and like, yeah, okay, maybe I'm gonna get a little bit hungry later, but then I'll grab a peach. And it's good sustenance, and I'm still taking care of myself, and I'm also still snacking. I'm not telling myself I can't snack, I'm just telling myself I can't eat a family-sized bag of potato chips every other day. And so that's really important to remember when we're talking about eating healthy and well-balanced meals. I know it's oversaid all the time, but it really makes a difference.
And it's all about balance. Like, if you want potato chips, by all means, eat a portion of potato chips.
Do I have potato chips in my cabinet right now? Absolutely.
Yeah, like today for lunch, I decided that I really wanted to eat queso. So when Amy got here, she literally, because I didn't bother with a separate dish for the queso, I literally just had the bag of chips and the thing of queso. But I told myself I was only going to eat a certain amount, and then I put the rest away. And this morning I had cherries, because cherries are my favorite, like, summer fruit right now, until blueberries are ready. Right now it's cherries. So, I found that balance in what I was going to eat. Like, I am all about health at every size. I think it's really important that people don't get too bogged down in like counting calories and portion control and all of that stuff, especially people with mental health concerns. That can become very negative very quick. But giving yourself the balance and respecting your body enough to eat things that makes your body feel good, in addition to making your mind feel good, I think that's a really important thing to do.
Yeah.
Same goes for exercise. So exercise is a really excellent way to take care of your mental health. I love going outside with my dog and seeing the world. I know canoeing and kayaking are great social distance activities because you're literally in a 6-foot boat. So
yeah, it's like set up for social distancing.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to not social distance in a kayak. So, finding those ways to still enjoy those activities and get that exercise. Going for a set walk every day at a certain time is a great way to incorporate it into a routine. I know that, having my dog is what really forces me out into the daylight sometimes.
And I've gotten really into biking. So I had a bike, so I'm short and I had to buy a children's bike, but it ended up not fitting what I wanted for it. So we found a really nice bike that someone was selling. And so I got that bike, and it made such a world of difference. And then I was like, oh my gosh. And then Sarah and I ended up going for a 10-mile bike ride without even realizing we had been biking for 10 miles because it felt so good, because I had found the thing that worked for me. And I can tell you on one finger how many times I've gone on a 10-mile bike ride. So it was awesome, and I was like, oh my gosh, I feel good, and like I could still probably go a little bit further. And I didn't realize that was something I was capable of until I found the right means to do it. So it is really important to find the things that make that difference to you, because if you would suggest that I go on a 10-mile bike ride the day before, I would have been like, okay, funny joke. But we ended up going on a 10-mile bike ride, and it felt phenomenal. but it was because I took the time to try things on to see what worked and what didn't work, and found it.
Yeah. For me, my favorite form of exercise is working in the garden. I made a huge point of only hand tilling stuff, only hand weeding stuff, because it forces me to be flexible and active, and I have to go twice a week to the garden that I am growing my fruits and vegetables in this summer. And so it does incorporate exercise while also doing a task that benefits the healthy eating aspect because I'm constantly bringing home vegetables from my garden already, and it's only going to get crazier soon. Like I am maybe overshot how many cayenne peppers I needed to grow.
Sarah will take some of those.
Oh, good to know. Yeah, because I'm going to have a lot. It's a thing.
Yeah, she'll definitely take some of those. I will not because I don't like spicy, but she will.
But yeah, finding those activities you enjoy, incorporating them into exercise where those intersections exist, like that's an awesome way to take care of your mental health.
The other thing to remember though is that like if you're not a person who enjoys exercise, don't do it. If you're not gonna feel good while you're exercising, you can find other things that are good for you. So doing puzzles, sitting by the beach and reading a book, whatever you need to do that's socially distant but still doing something that makes you feel good about yourself. Because, if you're not a person that likes to go for a run, I wouldn't suggest going for a 2-mile run every day because you're gonna feel worse when it's over or during it even. But, just finding activities that you can do that are socially distant and safe and healthy, but also that bring you up and not down.
Mm-hmm. And then don't feel like you're punishing yourself. How many times have we like overeaten and then been like, oh, I have to go for a run now? Like that's not fair or kind to yourself to do. So, employing that balance for sure. And I think there's something to be said about like trying new things. If you know you hate running, like going to YouTube and pulling up a yoga video and trying out some yoga moves. If you are a fan of meditating and you haven't tried yoga, I would definitely recommend that be something you check out because it is very, very similar. Or, if you like are sick of hiking but want to rent a bike for an afternoon and just see what that's like, exploring that and finding something that feels good. Because Amy's right on. If that's not what feels good to you, then that's not
you don't need to trick yourself into thinking it's going to feel good for you. You know what you like and you know what you don't like. There is something to be said about trying new things, but don't force yourself for the sake of saying, oh, well, I have to, because Mitch and Amy said I have to exercise. Not if you don't like to. Just make sure you're doing something for you that is directly, positively impacting your mental health to keep you from kind of going on that downward spiral.
My dad, so going into the next thing that's, of course, super important, getting plenty of sleep. My dad always told me that if I couldn't sleep at night, it was because I didn't get enough exercise the day before. And so I would, like, the next day then, like, push myself to do something, and I still wouldn't sleep that night. A lot of times because I would have, like, gone for a really long walk and then my legs hurt, So finding, like, ways to improve your sleep that work for you. For me, I've discovered that I need the room to be completely dark and not have any light pollution. And I've discovered that having moving air is also really important, so having a fan on. And sometimes when I'm really having trouble getting to sleep, I totally like do that thing where I go on Spotify and I type in crickets with one eye like pinched closed because I don't really want to see the light of my phone, so that I can have the cricket sounds in the background, because that always knocks me out because I think I'm at summer camp and I'm done.
Yeah, I mean, you already know I can't sleep without the Golden Girls playing in the background, and so, but Sarah doesn't like to have sound when we're going to sleep, so I have what's called a pillow speaker where it literally just like plugs into the headphone port of your laptop, so all the sound comes through my pillow, but she can't hear it at all. So I can still hear the Golden Girls and I can still go to sleep because I have that sound and it's not too muffled and it's not pitchy or anything like that, but she can't even tell. And that made a world of difference because not only is it a little bit quieter, so it doesn't sort of wake me up when I'm trying to fall asleep, but it was a really easy way for us to be able to compromise on like, hey, I don't care if you listen to the Golden Girls when you go to sleep. It wakes me up. So let's do this. And we tried it and it worked perfectly. So, it's important if you've got these things that you have to have when you're going to sleep, make sure you have them. I mean, we had my nieces over the weekend and she was like, well, I can't sleep without my Disney lullabies. And I was like, okay. So we set up her Disney lullabies and she went right to sleep because she knew that was what she needed. So, know what works for you and test a few things out until it works.
Like different types of pillows. Sometimes when I really can't sleep, I literally flip my bed upside down and I go put a clean sheet on and put my head where my feet were. Sometimes if I really can't sleep. Somehow that always works for me too. So identifying those things, because if you aren't getting regular sleep, like if you don't find some interrupted time in the night or early morning to get some good, like especially if you're a teenager, you need like what, 10 hours?
Yeah.
But even I need at least 6 hours of sleep to function. It creates like more brain fog. It puts frogs in your brain. It makes it difficult for you to be alert and aware and to really like function, let alone, have a good day and feel in control of things. So it's really important to identify like what things make it easier for you to sleep. And if it's something that you're having consistent trouble with, because insomnia is very real, especially stress-induced insomnia, taking that as the sign it is that you need to prioritize your mental health and your physical health and talk to a professional about the consistent issue with insomnia so that they can help you find ways to bring some relief and get you that really, really important rest.
Yeah, it's crucial.
Oh, puppy.
Oh, she said, I will help you sleep.
Well, and, too, like, that's kind of where the list wraps up of, like, things that are important to do is making time to connect with others that you care about, people and community and things that you're passionate about, connecting with individuals, organizations, because a lot of things are still happening online. People are finding more and more ways to like connect with each other. Like the Smith Opera House's film club is meeting on Zoom on Thursday nights after they do what they're calling their Netflix film club, where everybody watches the same movie on Netflix and then gets together and talks about it. So that's, an example of ways that people are continuing to have community events and engage. And as of this week, our youth support group is meeting every Monday at 2 o'clock. That's for youth ages 10 to 18 who identify anywhere in the LGBTQ spectrum or are allies and want to build that sense of community. And then every other week on Thursdays, our Trans and Gender Expansive Coalition group for trans and gender expansive adults meets on...
It's the first and third Thursday.
First and third Thursdays, yes, at 5. So those are just 2 examples of programs that we have that are back up and still going online. And you can reach out to us through here, through our emails, which we'll drop in the description, or through social media to get the links to attend those.
Yeah. So there are a lot of options out there, and we're always happy to talk to you one-on-one and give you more ideas. The overarching message here is just take care of you and do what you have to do to take care of you. And if that means making yourself a little bit vulnerable and sort of putting yourself out there, then that's what it takes. But we're here with you. You have our support. We are here to help you every step of the way. And it really is worth it to take care of you.
Riley agrees. As always.
Yeah. So we'll see you guys next week. Oh, Riley's so sad we're signing off.
It's okay, Ray. We'll be back.
We will. We'll be back next week. So, in the meantime, drop some of your favorite things to do for yourself in our comments, and we will see ya.
Yeah, take care. See you next week.
Bye.